Hello, friends. Happy Thursday, and welcome back to the Michael and Jill show. I don't know what it's called. We haven't decided, but welcome back to Wisdom. I hope y'all are having a great day. Excuse me. Today, we figured we would just talk about how to bounce back from business setbacks. And I think it's something that people don't really talk about a whole lot. Um, I don't think anybody really talks about the entrepreneur journey in more detail anyway. And like one of those things that we feel like happens a lot is when you hit a setback or when something happens or you've hit some sort of failure, how to really bounce back from it, how to navigate through it, how to learn from it, and how to make it, the thing that you do, or you just, how to take something and let it give you foresight for moving forward. Because Michael and I have been having a lot of conversations about what it really looks like to be an entrepreneur and that nobody really talks about it. And that's because school mostly teaches you how to behave at a job or a place of employment, but nobody really teaches you what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And one of those things is how you really deal with the setbacks of being in your own business.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's really really tough because yeah, like Jill was saying, nobody really talks to you about kind of what those look like or how to cope with them. And so I think early on in business we really really struggled with what we should do as far as setbacks go. Um,
Yeah. So, oh, cool. Well, Catherine is in here. We can
yeah,
bring her up
yeah,
because
go
I'd
ahead.
love to hear her perspective as well. But I think that is, what were you saying? That it's just
I
hard to
actually
know.
lost my train of
Oh,
thought and
okay.
I trailed off.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
Hi. Well, maybe Michael, your train of thought will pop in as I'm chatting.
I love it. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
We're doing really good. We're just sitting next to our Christmas tree right now and getting cozy, and we figured we'd hop on and do a wisdom chat just for fun.
Oh, nice. Well, I really appreciated that you were saying that in entrepreneurship, a lot of people don't talk about the struggles. And
Mhm.
I've worked with entrepreneur. I'm multi-generational entrepreneur, and I've been involved in the entrepreneur community for a really long time. And they hold conferences, and they bring the big successful people in to tell their story, or clients I'd worked with on the panel, and they go, and so I struggled. I started a business and I started making buns, and I thought I'm going to work with McDonald's. So I sent some letters, and then I was McDonald's only bun person. And I'm like, did you want to talk about when you almost went bankrupt? Did you want to mention that you had to do that for 5 years knocking on their door? Like, they leave that stuff out. And I'm going to tell you, it aggravates me, especially when I know the truth. It aggravates me because I watch the audience who are new or struggling just deflate. I hear the conversations of them going, I'm never going to do this. Like, how am I going to do this? Like, everything just seemed to work for this person. It's not working for me. Why is it not working for me? I think we need to get more entrepreneurs to tell the truth and the whole story.
Yes, totally agree. Michael was saying he's making us food right now, but he was saying it's kind of
Oh, good. What
like,
is it?
what are you making? I think
I'm
he's
I'm making spaghetti with homemade meatballs.
But it's like the movies, like they show like a little hint of the struggle, but obviously it's a movie, so they have to wrap it up and they have to make it, where somebody is successful in an hour and a half. And I'm totally with you. I've been to those conferences and they're so inspiring, and it's so cool to see what can actually be done, and like the potential that's out there to grow your own business, start your own stuff, do your own thing. But yeah, I think we were talking earlier that, Michael and I come from, like, we went to school, we had parents who had jobs, and it's just nobody really talks about, like, it's sometimes a day to day thing. You're just literally taking it one day at a time, but nobody talks about like the times when like a client is supposed to pay and they're like, actually, I can't work with you anymore. My husband won't let me, or, just crazy stuff like that. Like nobody talks about stuff like that and how it's hard, like the majority of the time. But from what you've seen, it's supposed to be good majority of the time. Does that make sense?
Well, not only that, but I've even seen the panels that are supposed to talk about how you get capital. And they don't talk about when they struggled not getting capital. They only talk about when they had the win. And
Mhm.
if we start talking about how do you get capital, and how many failures do you have, and how do you work around those failures, and what did you learn from it, and how did you mentally get through it? That's what people really want to know and hear, because I want to know that you became successful because you figured out how to get through setbacks. I don't want to know that you're successful because you're some sort of like magical fairy from another planet who never had any.
Mhm.
That's not helpful to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think too, it's important to talk about how to get through it, like how to not let it stick with you, and affect you and your actions moving forward, but for you to learn from it, to give you the foresight for future issues that may arise. But I think that, everybody talks about how the entrepreneur journey is a lonely one, and it's really important to get out there and to meet other business owners who are willing to talk about the struggle, to be honest, to talk about the solutions that they found along the way, so that you're not feeling so alone when something happens.
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend to new entrepreneurs to get into a mastermind, the traditional mastermind where entrepreneurs come together, they meet, they pick a topic they're struggling over, or one person is, they all work together to help solve it, and then they meet in another month. Not the class that masterminds have become, but actual real
Mhm.
masterminds. That is so helpful. And finding people in different industries can be really helpful because they've come at it different direction, and it gives you innovative, creative ideas, because that is so helpful. It is lonely, especially if you don't have an entrepreneur community. Like most of my family are entrepreneurs, my friends, my community are entrepreneurs. But if you're coming from a work environment, fine, there's meetups, there's all these different things, because that is so important. You're right, Jill, that like that's a key element.
That's a really good point that you bring up, Catherine. I want to ask you a follow-up question because I think that was our main issue before social audio was finding that network of entrepreneurs because we would go to like the meetups and they would always be really disappointing. So like where are some suggestions or what are some places if people are listening that you could give them as far as if they're looking for that kind of network, as an entrepreneur?
Well, I would say think of people that you admire. Think of things that are really interesting to you. Are you interested in policy for business? Are you interested in the training elements? What kind of areas? And then get involved in the associations or organizations, because they often have roles for teams or committee members where you can actually get involved in smaller groups and get to know highly successful entrepreneurs. And that's how I got in with a huge group. As I found an organization and got involved, ended up being on the advisory board, and was mentored by all these amazing people. And it's harder now to get face to face, but they're still doing small groups. So really investigate what the opportunity, and then ask, how can I get more involved? How is there a committee I can be involved in? How do I get in this role? Start asking those questions. And not many people ask. So they're going to be like, wow, really? You're that excited? And they'll help you find a way.
You know what I think is important too that people don't realize is we've met so many successful entrepreneurs along the way who are further ahead than us. And I've just gone up and asked them, like, hey, would you be willing to mentor us? We're feeling stuck in this area. We need some help and guidance. Would you be willing to do that? And we've only done this like a handful of times, but every time we've asked, everyone has said yes. And they always helped us with the clarity that we needed, helped us problem solve. So I think that's an important thing to remember too, is there are a lot of business owners and successful people out there who are willing to give advice and help, because that's a different form of legacy. So if there's somebody that you've been connecting with who's also a business owner that you know on like a at least a first name basis, you can always ask them like, hey, would you be willing to give me an hour of your time just to like mentor me? I don't know what I'm doing. I need help in this area.
Yeah, and I will say, because I used to run national mentoring organizations, and I have to say the number one thing to follow up with that is be really clear and organized in what you're going to ask and what direction you want to go. And like, it doesn't have to be detail pointed, but know why you want their help, know how you want to use their help, be the one who follows up, and they will help you. But I mean, like, many times I couldn't take someone to mentor unless you were organized. I'm like, I can't just take wishy-washy phone calls. And that's what happens a lot is
Mm,
people go, I don't know what I don't know. I'm like, well, pick a topic and, figure out what your struggle is, because, I'm happy to help you, but you need to be organized. And so the more organized you are and the more clear you are on maybe what you're not clear on, if that makes sense. I'm struggling with
mhm.
marketing, then the more likely you are to get really high level help.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, we met a woman who worked with her husband and they were full time and they were just like probably a couple years ahead of us in business. And I was like, hey, we're struggling in this area. Can you help us? And she was like, oh, yeah, totally. So, yeah, I totally agree with you about being organized for sure. Because you don't want to go into a meeting and be like, oh, I don't know, because that person is giving you their time when they typically charge for it. So being organized is really important so that they can actually do what you give you the advice that you need.
Right. And they'll be more willing to help you, and they'll be more willing to give you resources or point you to someone else they respect. Like, I won't give you
Mm.
one of my contacts unless I know that you're worth their time. But if you are, I've got some good high profile contacts. I would be more than happy to ask to help you. And they will, because I only send them people organized.
Mm. Catherine, thanks so much for coming up.
No worries. This is an awesome, awesome topic. I love that you brought it up.
Oh, that was so cool. I absolutely love her because she offers such good, clear, logical advice. And like always, you can tell like when Catherine speaks, it is backed up by so much experience. You know what I mean, babe? So yeah, I mean, like, and that's super important. Like what she said, if you are going to, work with, if you're asking somebody to mentor you, like be focused, be diligent about where you need help, and be honest. I think that that's another place too where people get hung up is they're like, oh, like I'm kind of exposing myself a little bit, but it's only to help you. So I think it's okay to be vulnerable if you're going to have somebody mentor you, give you advice.
Yeah, I think it's just like with anything. I mean, if you think about like instructions, like we just put something together that had really bad instructions. And so it was really, really hard to do. But if something has really, really easy instructions, it's easy to do. And so I kind of think of it that way when it's like coming to somebody who can maybe help you. Like the clearer and more concise you are in what it is that you need and what they have that can help you, the easier it is for them to say, oh, okay. But yeah, kind of like she was saying, the harder you make it, the more they're inclined to say no, not necessarily because they want to, but because they don't have the time to be, kind of dealing with all the specifics.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that she brought that up because we had a couple talking points. But yeah, it's just networking with people who understand, who are willing to be honest about it and talk about how they got through it, what was their mindset, what did they do afterwards, what were the action steps. It's just really important to surround yourself with people who are in similar spots, but even better would be who are further ahead than you because then they can help you navigate. And that's really important. So networking obviously super important. And you can do that on social apps like Social Pilot. Or, oh my God, Social Pilot. Oh my God. Rewind. That is our shout out Social Pilot, but
That is the
social audio.
yeah, that is the tool we use to schedule all of our content for ourselves and
for
clients
our
for our
clients.
agency.
Yeah. But social audio I met. So apps like Wisdom are really, really great for networking with people on a very personal level. Obviously, you can still network with people on Instagram and through Facebook groups. And then now that in-person events are coming back, getting in with in-person events or going to conferences, or like Catherine said, getting in an actual mastermind where it's not a class, it's more of a collaboration of people coming together. So, yes, that's perfect. That was point number one. Point number two, and this is definitely kind of a hard pill to swallow, especially when you're right in the thick of it, is look for the lesson instead of like wondering, why did this happen to me? Instead, it's almost like, I almost think of it as like, okay, it's another tool in my tool belt of what could happen on this journey. And now I know how to prepare for it. Obviously, when you're in like the thick of it and in the emotion of it, that's the last thing you want to hear. So it's important to process the emotion behind whatever the setback is, and then afterwards think about what's the lesson, how can you prepare for it. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I always think of it too as like if I'm experiencing setbacks, I'm doing something. And so at least I'm moving in the direction of wherever it is that I want to go. And so it's better than if I wasn't doing anything, because if I was doing nothing, I wouldn't be experiencing anything. Oh, you okay there?
Yeah, hiccup.
Oh, I thought it went down the wrong pipe. Jill's drinking water, so she has a cool Starbucks cup that tells you how much water you're supposed to drink in a day. It's really cool.
Also, shout out Starbucks.
Also, none of these are sponsored, so these are just random shout outs. Anyways, but yeah, I just think of it as setbacks. And like she said, it's really hard in the moment, but it's more of like, well, at least I'm moving in the right direction and there's always a lesson to learn.
Yeah, definitely easier said than done in the moment, but it definitely prepares you when you're like, okay, next time I see the signs of this happening, I'm not going to do it. um, or I know how to prepare, I know how to have a backup plan or a plan B. So just I would just think of it mostly in that way of, like, okay, I've seen this happen before, now I know what to do. I can be less emotional about it and think a little bit more logically. I'd say for me, that's personally something that I've done. And then the third point we had was learning from that particular situation so that doesn't happen again. Oh, kind of already talked about that.
Kind of a
Do you
little
want
bit.
to talk about that a little more?
Yeah, because I mean, like the worst thing to do is to experience a business setback. And obviously, there's things that you can't control, but maybe I'm just going to try and think of an example. Okay, so maybe like you for had a Black Friday sale and you messed up the code, and so people couldn't put the code in, and so you got like a bunch of emails of people who like are saying they couldn't put the code in and they're angry and frustrated and upset. So maybe you think, okay, like, and you lose sales from it. And you're like, okay, well, so what can I do next time to make sure that doesn't happen again? Okay, well, maybe the night before a sale, I will make sure that before I shut down everything, I will check as one of like my check off things that like my codes are all right on the sales or something. That's like a random example off the top of my head. But just making sure that if you experience something that's a quote unquote setback or you would consider a setback, and it's actually something that you can control or prevent maybe in the future, just making sure that you're like, okay, like lesson learned, I'm going to make sure and add this in there so that if that does happen again in the future, like I'm good.
Yes, I had a point to that and then I forgot it.
I'm sure it was beautiful.
I'm sure it was really good and
As beautiful as this spaghetti.
yes, definitely. But yeah, I think it's just like I think it's just understanding, oh, here's a good point. That's not the same point, but it's different. A failure is sometimes actually a good thing because it exposes your blind spots and it exposes like maybe where you need to tighten up a little bit, you need to be a little bit more organized, you need to prepare more, whatever that is. But I think that that is sometimes the nice thing that you can look back in hindsight and be like, okay, I wasn't prepared in this aspect. I could have done X, Y, and Z, and next time I will do that. So I think just letting like that lets you know, like if there's failures, that's just showing um like I said, what did I say? Blind spots, like blind spots in your system or in your process. Man, I am spacey today, but whatever you're doing, like there's an area that you need to tighten up. And what's funny is like it's funny when you discover that also with clients. Like I had a client once that was like, "Hey, you asking questions about this made me realize I have some blind spots in my marketing, and I'm really glad that you asked these questions." So it's just getting to know yourself and your business more, and the way that you do business. It helps you, failures help you see where you can be more efficient and more productive and more prepared, if that makes sense, babe.
It totally makes sense. Sorry, you were talking and you gave me a really good idea, so I wanted to
Mm,
write it down.
okay. Yeah, that's the worst when you have an idea and you lose it.
Well, that's one of
Like I
my
just
things
did.
for 2022. I don't know if anybody else, like you have things like, obviously there's the ones like, let's get off the like, I want to eat healthier and I want to work out, but we'll get past like the surface level ones, and everybody has,
We'll do a whole talk on this too.
well, but everybody has those ones where they're like, it's kind of individual. And mine is when I have a good idea or what I think is a good idea, let's just put it that way. I want to write it down because I have this nasty habit of like, oh, I'll remember in 5 minutes to write it down. And I never do. So there's so many what I perceive to be good ideas, but probably people would say are whatever, but like that are out there in the universe that I don't even remember anymore. So,
So what was the thing you wrote down?
I can't say it is my idea.
Oh, does it pertain to this conversation? Or?
No, it doesn't actually.
Oh.
It's completely irrelevant to this
You're
conversation.
gonna make everybody be hanging on what
Well,
the
it's
thing was.
it's a personal strategy
Okay.
for us.
Got it.
That'll be $5,000.
Oh my gosh, you're so cute. But yeah, so I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But I hope that you guys found this helpful and that in business, it is certainly not perfect. You go through incredibly high highs and you go through low lows as well. And sometimes you just kind of have to ride the waves out and figure out your process of doing business to make things smoother in the future. But stuff's always going to happen no matter what level you're at. Doesn't matter like the dollar amount, clients, following, any of that. You're always going to find some sort of problem or issue or setback with whatever new level you achieve. So knowing that, whatever level success is not going to just solve every single problem, but to just be prepared.
Yeah. And make a warm bowl of pasta. It'll help. It's really good.
You're so cute.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. But yeah, I would say the best advice would just be to find a group of people, because I think when you're surrounded by people who understand what you're going through, it gives you that outlet to be able to really share. So thank you, everyone. We will be back tomorrow, but until then, we hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Bye, friends.